This is Crypto Kyo giving you news, ways to make money on cryptocurrency, and updates. As I've told you before, I like following this guy. I don't even want to butcher his name. It's Alessio Rastani. And he has a lot of good points. And I haven't done this in a while, but I wanted you guys to listen to what he had to say. So this is where he starts off. He starts off saying um, that you should be, I know those of you that bought high in crypto are kind of freaking out, but this, even though he also talks about that, try to keep a steady um, leveled head, just like the dot com era, or even 2008, I believe, the market crashed, and a lot of people lost a lot of money in their stocks. But those that didn't sell and kept their money still on stocks ended up making the same, making up their money, as well as increasing it. And those that sold as soon as it was dipping down, they ended up losing a lot of money. So here is what he has to say about the bearish market so far in crypto. So here we go. Let's see.
Also dropping. I'm hoping that whether you're a Bitcoin investor or you're a hardcore believer in Bitcoin, you'll come to agree with me that this drop in Bitcoin price is actually a good thing and why it's necessary before Bitcoin can actually recover and go up again. You see, there are three important reasons for this. The first important reason is this: we need to get rid of the dead wood. Let me explain to you what I mean by the dead wood. I'm talking about gamblers. I'm talking about people who bought Bitcoin for no other reason than to try and get rich quick. I'm talking about people who essentially bought Bitcoin prices because they heard about them as they were skyrocketing above 15, 18,000 here. And then they thought, oh, you know what? I don't want to miss out on this. So they bought Bitcoin at nearly $20,000 or $19,000. And of course, they're now sitting in about a 70% hole as it dropped. So I'm talking about these kinds of people because these are essentially people who have absolutely no interest in Bitcoin itself. These are people who did not care whatsoever what Bitcoin was. They heard about it on the news. They heard about it from social media with their friends. Their friends were making money in Bitcoin, and they decided to buy Bitcoin not because of its potential, not because of what it was, but purely as a get-rich-quick idea. And as my good friend Paul Elliott says, the fastest way to go broke is to try and get rich quick. In other words, we're talking about people who bought Bitcoin like a lottery ticket as a way to simply become extremely rich. Now, don't get me wrong here. I do know people, very smart people, who've become very rich in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But those are the smart folks who bought Bitcoin the right time. For example, I know one guy who bought Bitcoin when it was extremely cheap and no one was talking about it back then. And of course, he made a great deal amount of money and fortune from it. So well done to him. But the folks who absolutely have no interest in Bitcoin, other than to get rich quick, the gamblers I'm talking about, the dead wood. We need this dead wood, these weak hands who bought Bitcoin at the wrong time. We need them to exit the market. We need them to disappear from the market. And until they do so, it is unlikely that Bitcoin is going to bottom. And I think we're coming very close to that situation when they are going to exit the market. All right. So remember, we need the lottery, get rich quick folks to exit the market. As simple as that. Number two, the second reason why it's a good thing that Bitcoin prices are dropping is that it's going to teach those folks, those people who essentially bought Bitcoin as no other thing than to get rich quick, it's going to teach them an important lesson on risk. If there's one thing I hope those folks will learn, is to learn to respect risk. I think you'll agree with me, especially when you look at your friends on social media, that a lot of them don't actually care about risk at all. I remember back when Bitcoin prices were, skyrocketing to 19 or 20,000, a lot of people were saying, oh yeah, Bitcoin is going to go to 100,000, 50,000, 200,000. But how many of them actually were saying, hey, you know what? How much could I lose here? So a lot of these folks simply do not care about risk. They have not learned the lessons of what happens when you don't respect risk. They have never been punished by the market when you don't care about risk. And you know what? I'm hoping that this drop is going to teach them an important lesson, which, by the way, is a lesson I have learned myself personally. Let me just tell you, the only reason I'm saying this, and I know some of you are probably thinking I'm being a bit harsh, I don't mean to be nasty here. Actually, I think it's a more of a tough love situation here because I myself, when I was very young, about 20 years ago, when I was 19, 20 years old, I made a disastrous decision back then to invest in dot-com stocks. Now, I know there's some people watching this video who hate the idea of Bitcoin being compared to dot-coms. But look, the important point I'm trying to make here is that I myself personally have suffered the consequences of what happens when you do not respect risk and you don't care about respecting the market. Back in 2000, in the year 2000, I bought a dot-com stock, and I bought that stock when it was extremely expensive, and I knew a few friends of mine were buying it, and guess what? When that dropped, I made the most disastrous mistake of my life because I kept buying in more of it as it kept dropping. And I don't know what I was doing back then. I was 19, 20 years old. I had a stash amount of cash set aside for investing, and guess what? As prices were falling, I kept thinking, you know what, these are bargains, and I kept thinking it's going to go back up, and it didn't go back up, and finally, by the year 2000 2003, it had gone. I mean, most of my investment vanished back then. So I learned an important lesson back then: never ever to make this mistake again. So guess what, guys? If you've lost money in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, well, guess what? I've been there too 20 years ago in a different market. And that taught me an important lesson. If you read the book Market Wizards by Jack Schwager, a lot of the investors, a lot of the great investors in that book have themselves made mistakes, have themselves lost a lot of money in their own investments. And it's taught them a great lesson. All right, guys. So I'm hoping that a lot of the folks out there who bought Bitcoin at the wrong time and have lost money, I hope they're going to learn their own lesson to respect risk and respect the market as well. And here comes the third important reason why you should be glad that Bitcoin prices are falling. Because all markets go through cycles. They go through bull cycles and bear cycles. And also they go through cycles when fear and greed are at their extreme point. So near the top, there's greed, and near the bottom, there's a lot of fear. Right now, there's a lot of fear. So as Bitcoin prices have been dropping, yes, the sentiment has now turned against Bitcoin. If you, for example, observe what people are saying on social media about Bitcoin, what are your own friends saying about Bitcoin right now on Facebook or other places, a lot of the sentiment is extremely negative. People are calling for lower and lower prices. When you compare that to December, when people were calling for higher and higher prices, I knew back then that it was the worst possible time to buy Bitcoin. So remember, guys, do pay attention to what folks are saying on social media and try to do the opposite. If a lot of your friends, if the majority of your friends and people you know are extremely bullish on a particular market like Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, then try and do the opposite. That's a huge warning signal. Take a look, for example, on this statistic from Google Trends. People have lost interest in Bitcoin. Look at this. Interest in Bitcoin or buying Bitcoin peaked in December, as you'll see here. I'll show you exactly when that was. As you'll see here, between the 3rd to the 9th of December, there was the maximum amount of interest in buying Bitcoin, right about there, according to Google Trends. And that interest has just plunged. Look at that. It's just continued plunging all the way down here. So the majority of folks out there, the dumb money, have lost interest in Bitcoin, and that's a good thing. Remember, guys, as a contrarian, you want to do the opposite of everybody else. That's a fantastic thing. All right? Because remember, guys, that also produces for us the best buying opportunities. We want to buy Bitcoin when it's cheap, not when it's expensive. We want to buy them at those turning points, the fantastic turning points. And also, let me show you this. Apart from Bitcoin, people lost interest in other cryptocurrencies too. This is Ripple. And you can see that interest in buying Ripple peaked in December to late beginning of January. And that interest has just plunged. Look at that. So the fact that the cycle is now turning and a lot of people are extremely fearful, it's a good thing. It's a fantastic thing because it means that we're coming close to that turning point when finally we see the prices returning and going back up again. All right. Now, I don't think we're probably there yet, but we're coming close. Also, remember what Paul Tudor Jones says in the book Market Wizards. He says, I believe the very best money is made in market terms. To some extent, to be a good trader, you have to be a good contrarian. And I can't stress that enough, guys. You've got to do the opposite of the herd. You've got to do the opposite of everybody else. If everybody is moving one way, try and go the other way. You're likely to be far more successful in what you're doing, especially when it comes to investing, by doing the opposite of the masses. In other words, buy when everyone is afraid and sell when others are excited with greed.
Well, there you go. I would suggest you guys subscribe to this guy. I'm going to leave the link below of his channel. He has a lot of really good information, and I just want to let you guys know that, I have been talking about, Bitcoin going in its slump, and it's kind of come up, and it still hasn't come up. But still, if you are one of these three people, and I know I am one of them, um, it doesn't have to, you don't have to stay that way. You can change into being a smarter investor. Um, you don't have to be one of those that trade bitcoins or trade in the stocks. You just have to be a smarter investor, and that's what I am working on. And I hope that maybe if you guys want to profit in this cryptocurrency um, industry or arena, you'll be able to do that as well. Even though this may not have sounded like good news, it actually is good news because it can teach us how to be better, better people, better investors, and just see, notice things around us that may not be what it seems like. Like they say, people encouraging to buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, and now they're saying they want Bitcoin to be lower. They're not going to buy Bitcoin. Um, it's almost like it's counterintuitive not to buy it when people are telling you to buy it, but it actually is the best strategy. Again, this is Crypto Keo giving you news, updates, and ways that you can earn on cryptocurrency. Like, share, subscribe, and let's see, like, share, subscribe, and comment. All right, well, I will definitely see you in the next video.